Welcome to another video. This time it is the Polish monarchs. This one's going to be different as many of these are disputed, even whether or not they existed. We are going to go up to Stanislaus II, as most historians consider him the last king of Poland. The first two Polish monarchs, Lech and Cracus, were first written of in the 13th century. Their fates are unknown. Cracus's son, another Cracus, was also first written of in the 13th century and more than likely never existed. He did found the city of Krakow by legend, and then in the next day he defeated a dragon, and the day after that he was assassinated. And the next six are just like the first two, where there's no record of their end. Papier II was not a good king. He spent his time living out his own dreams and did nothing to stop the invasions in Poland. He was so hated that the citizens placed him under arrest. Whilst under arrest, a huge swarm of mice entered the tower that he was being held in and ate the deposed king. Following this, it's four more monarchs that never likely existed, and the first king that we actually know existed was Mikso I. He was charismatic, talented, powerful, and someone who led well, both during peacetime and wartime. However, he had slowed down towards the end of his life and died from age-related illness. Bolesław the Brave was the first person to call themselves king instead of duke. However, he was only king for about 60 days before his death. His exact cause of death is disputed, although he had been suffering from age-related illnesses even before becoming king. He was succeeded by Mikso II, who was not a good king at all. He lost almost all the Polish territory and got himself involved in wars that the kingdom didn't even need to take part in. And they didn't even have the resources for. Due to this, he was deposed and died of natural causes 2 years later. When Bezprym came to power, everyone thought the empire would stabilize. They were mistaken when cruelty took over. He shoved anyone away who didn't agree with him, which led to major conflicts. He tried to dismiss the leaders of the military, who turned on him and had him assassinated. Otto was another ruler who reigned for a very short amount of time, about 14 months. His reign ended with his death at the age of 33 from natural causes. Dietrich was never the sole ruler of Poland, as he was removed when Otto died. He was sent into exile, where he disappears from the historical records. Bolesław the Forgotten clearly lives up to his nickname. No surviving sources mention him as king. There are just records of a King Bolesław that just so happen to not match up with any other King Bolesław. As he is not explicitly mentioned, many people don't even consider him a king. Obviously, no one knows what happened to him. Casimir I was never actually crowned king due to internal drama. Despite this, he had a massive impact on Poland and was known as the Restorer. He died in 1058 at the age of 42. No cause of death has been discovered. We have another unpopular monarch who died in prison, this being Bolesław II. How he died, though, it's disputed. Sources from the time claim that he had died suddenly, and that is all we have to go off of. It is probable, however, that he was assassinated. Władysław I is mostly forgotten by history. His health, or lack thereof, is part of the reason why. He had been in poor health throughout his life, contracting illness after illness. One of these ended up taking him down, however, we are not sure what the specific illness was. Bignau was never the sole ruler of Poland, being deposed by his brother and co-ruler about 5 years into their rule. Following his deposition, Bignau remained popular with the people who wanted him restored to the throne. This never happened, however, as he died suddenly from unknown causes. Next two monarchs, nothing known. Bolesław IV, we could also make an argument for, as no cause of death has ever been found. However, It is believed that he had a long-standing illness at the time of his death. Whether or not it contributed, we will never know. Mikso III served 4 non-consecutive terms as King of Poland, the final one ending when he was removed for the 4th time in 1201. He was 79 years old at the time and never tried to take the throne back. He died the next year, just after his 80th birthday, from complications relating to aging. Casimir II deposed the previous guy twice. He was a skilled general and a well-respected politician during his time. He cared for his citizens and was popular, even with those who preferred Mikso III. In fact, when Casimir II invaded for the second time after being replaced by Mikso, Mikso surrendered without a fight. The whole country went into mourning when Casimir II died of food poisoning 3 years later, aged 55. Okay, this one's going to be interesting. Let's check the first. Led a meeting of all dukes and nobles in Poland. The meeting did not go as planned, however. Once the dukes had just finished taking a bath and were going back to work, someone managed to get into the palace. Leschek, however, managed to ride horseback 3 towns over. When he had stopped, thinking that he had escaped, he found out that the guy was trailing him. He was assassinated on the spot. Another member of that meeting was Vladislav III. Unlike Leschek, he was deeply unpopular and had likely been the target of the attack in the first place. He did manage to escape. However, as fate would have it, just 4 years later, the 64-year-old was also assassinated. In the middle of the drama where monarchs were getting deposed and restored, Mikso IV took over. He was the oldest person ever to take the throne, becoming king at the age of 80. As such, it was assumed that he wouldn't really rock the boat too much. That came true when, just about a year later, he died of age-related illnesses. The person who finally ended the drama was Henry I. Despite only reigning for 7 years, he stabilized the country and instituted major reforms. He is another monarch for whom no sources give a cause of death. His son, another Henry, also tried to keep Poland stable. However, the Mongols invaded, and despite his best efforts for peace, he needed to be a wartime leader. He only had limited military experience and was going to go fight one of the most powerful empires in the history of the world. It went about as well as you would expect, with Henry's death in battle and Poland losing a lot of its territory. Next 4, no idea about hardly anything about them. That includes their fate. We have an opposite problem here with Henry IV. There are too many sources that regard his end. The most common theory is that someone poisoned the king's utensils. However, others say that he died from vomiting. Another said that it was a sudden illness. And one even says that it was a sudden act of God. We will never know for sure. Percival II didn't hardly get any time as king following his coronation. He had been king for a few months and had held power for a little bit longer, but the coronation was the symbolic start to a monarch's reign. He was assassinated just days after the coronation, likely on the orders of Wenceslas II. Yes, there was never a Wenceslas I, but he goes down in history as Wenceslas II due to the fact that he reigned over Bohemia as a Wenceslas II, where there was a Wenceslas I. When he tried to take over Hungary, his plans were cancelled once he fell ill with tuberculosis. He was succeeded by his son, Wenceslas III. Like his father, he also died suddenly when someone snuck up on the king and assassinated him. He was never caught, and it remains one of the biggest mysteries in Polish history. He was succeeded by Vladislav, who for some reason is called Vladislav I, even though there had been 3 previous rulers with that name. He was known as Elbow High due to his small stature. He died after 13 years of rule from natural causes. Next up, we have Casimir the Great, who was king for more than 3 times as long as his predecessor. He reigned for 37 years. He cared for his subjects and was well respected for that. Now, for the purposes of this video. Casimir had always loved hunting, and one time while on a hunt, he was involved in a riding accident. He ended up succumbing to the injuries shortly thereafter and was succeeded by his nephew Louis, who was already king of Hungary and Croatia. He reformed all that he ruled over and was another highly popular monarch. While defending Pope Urban VI, Louis was found deceased in his tent. Specifics are unknown, but he was taken ill a few days prior. His 4-year-old daughter, Jadwiga, became queen in Poland. She unified the countries and was the third ultra-popular monarch in a row. She is recognized as a saint in the Catholic Church, and she got all this done despite dying young from a sudden illness. Possibly a tumor. Her husband, Władysław II, was a true warrior king. He led Polish-Lithuanian forces to victory at the Battle of Grunwald, one of the largest and most important battles of medieval Europe. He also managed several minor skirmishes and was the longest reigning Polish monarch, 48 years as king. What would you guys think ended such a warrior? Because it's probably not what you would expect. It was the common cold. Władysław III is another interesting one. Most presume that he ended up perishing on the battlefield at Varna. This is the likeliest explanation. However, multiple sources also record him after the battle in the Holy Land. It is quite possible that he escaped, but until further research is done, we will never know. Next, we have Casimir IV. For all we know about his end, a lot more is known about the curse related to his tomb. 10 of the people who discovered it perished shortly thereafter. As for what took the king, he simply succumbed to pneumonia at 64. He had reigned for over 65% of his lifetime. John I, better known as John Albert, succeeded Casimir. For a long time, people thought of him as a good king. Now he is seen less positively. He was cruel, and his record in battle isn't as impressive as most people of the time made it seem. It was in one of these battles that John was injured. Whether it be an attack, a fall, or something completely different, we don't know. He ended up passing from the injury a couple of years later. His brother, Alexander, died of paralysis shortly thereafter. Sigismund I spent most of his reign putting down rebellions, yet still managed to do okay. He established a sense of Polish identity, yet laid the groundwork for the Polish-Lithuanian unification. Despite all the rebellions, he managed to live into old age. He passed away on the 1st of April, Easter Sunday, in the year 1548. He had been in poor health for a long time and simply passed from old age. Sigmund II died from tuberculosis. Henry. He was the son of the King of France and ended up actually becoming King of France the next year. 4 days before celebrating 2 years on the Polish throne, he was called to France to be crowned as King Henry III of France. 14 years later, he was called into a meeting. He left his bodyguards after being requested to meet privately. This was a fatal mistake, as he was assassinated. Next two monarchs we don't know, however, both of them were in declining health. Sigismund III is next, and this is weird. His end came suddenly and unexpectedly. It seems as if he could have lived another 20 or 30 years. Healthy organs, was physically fit, and yes, he was middle to upper age. He was 65, but we don't know. We don't know what happened to him. Władysław IV was a planner. If all his plans came to fruition, he could have easily been one of the best kings Poland ever had. However, most of them didn't. A lot of that is due to his poor health. He ended up passing from a kidney ailment at the age of 52. John II is the next monarch. He was a former cardinal of the Catholic Church and the half-brother of Władysław IV. He was king for 19 years and abdicated when his wife passed away. He himself passed a year later from apoplexy. Michael I was the shortest lived monarch in over 200 years. His end came at 33 from food poisoning. John III died at 66 from a heart attack. Back to something interesting. Augustus II was deposed and regained the throne soon after. He actually reigned for 23 more years and then lost his toe in an accident. This led to gangrene, which led to his end. He was a patron of the arts, very popular, and very missed. Unlike the grumpy Stanislaw I, who ended up being deposed twice, he managed to live for 30 years after being removed for the final time and lived to 88. He was the longest living Polish monarch, and he died as a result of burns sustained in an accident. Augustus III was one of the people that deposed Stanislaw. He, unlike most of his recent predecessors, ended up passing away on the throne. He had a sudden attack of apoplexy and passed that night at the age of 66. Which brings us to Stanislaw II, the final Polish monarch. He is another one who got deposed, but unlike a lot of recent ones, he only lived for another 3 years before dying of a stroke. Thank you all for watching. Please like and please subscribe.